Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. So today we have a pretty significant snowstorm coming up the eastern seaboard. It will hit on Sunday. We will be having snow at least in the DC area for much of Sunday into Sunday night and possibly into the early AM of Monday, maybe around 5 to 7 a.m. before the snow cuts off. Although this is not our local forecast office, I feel that the Philadelphia office does a bigger and better map of showing what the current situation is, so I will be showing that. So first off, we have the blizzard warning from Boston, which is outside of the legend, but yeah, basically blizzard warnings for the coast from Boston all the way down to Delaware, possibly will be extended down into Salisbury, Maryland, that area. That area will be expecting 2 foot plus totals. I wouldn't be surprised if some people saw 36 to 40 or in excess of 3 feet total, and also wind gusts of up to storm or possibly even hurricane force along the barrier islands and the immediate coast. So Atlantic City, Long Island, even New York City is under a blizzard warning. This is a big storm. It will be a major storm. For this area, it might be a once in a generation or possibly even once in a lifetime storm. This is what we're looking at. It's pretty significant. And then the further west you go, since the low is centered off the coast about 100 nautical miles, the snow will be slightly lesser as you head west. So we have winter storm warnings put up for all of New Jersey besides the blizzard warning area, as well as Philadelphia, and then the Allentown, eastern Allentown, and then also up into most of New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Rhode Island. All of you are under winter storm warnings. That area is expecting 1 to 2 feet of snow. Some areas could exceed 24 to 30 inches, maybe an isolated 3 foot total closer to the coast near Philadelphia, Trenton, New York, where the winds aren't as bad and the snowflakes aren't shredded, so snow totals may be increased because of higher liquid to snowfall ratios, which without the high winds may help make the snow more fluffier. And then down here we have the Baltimore, Washington area. This is a high area of uncertainty right now. Although models have backed down from the idea of 40 inches for that area, which was the American model about 2 days ago, they've also stopped saying that we will only be getting 1 to 3 inches. So for the Baltimore, Washington area, excluding the Pennsylvania areas, the further north you go, so around the Baltimore, Washington, all the way down to Salisbury, up the eastern shore, we're expecting around maybe up to a foot, possibly up to 18 inches in the worst case near Baltimore and further up near Pennsylvania, but around the nation's capital, we're expecting around a foot. And then the further south and maybe a bit east as you go, the totals go down. So like areas like Richmond, Salisbury, and points south, you could be only seeing 3 to 6. So I expect that the current area outlined under the winter storm watch will be put under a winter storm warning soon, probably by this afternoon. They need to see the high resolution models run again at the 18 UTC hour, which happens around 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern. So I would say Washington right now has a chance of 8 inches, Baltimore around a foot, and then the further north and east you go, the worse it gets. So we have the probabilistic winter weather amount. So Washington currently has a 3 inch expected value, but the range is 0.5 to 10 inches, and the high end amount is up to 15 inches, up to 18 inches in Baltimore, which is pretty extreme. I would be leaning more towards the 10-inch range considering how the low is intensifying. I'll show you that later. So we are only 24 hours out, but the models aren't agreeing. So the models actually agreed on Tuesday, but then the euro never got on board and then things fell apart on Wednesday. And the models have basically been fighting each other ever since. So what has been driving this? So the GFS for one is a somewhat unreliable model, but I think this time it scored a win because it was the first one to be picking out the big blizzard for the Atlantic coast, although there wasn't a big blizzard for the DC area, but still it was the one that was picking out the big blizzard. And then the European somehow hasn't been performing that well for the last two storms. It's been doing the windshield wiper, which is just flipping left and right. So a big reason for this is that the models have been less reliable, is that the weather balloon launches have been defunded across the Rocky Mountains. So there is some lack of sampling data, especially where the ridge or the western ridge will set up in regards for this event, because some of the stations directly underneath where the ridge will set up have been defunded. So this is not helping things, and compounded with the intensity of the low and the rapid strengthening of it, we just can't get a consensus. So we can see some forecast models here. This is the American model. So right now we have a low centered around South Carolina, Georgia, and then we have a surface low there, and we have an upper level northern stream disturbance, a Pacific jet disturbance, and all of these will meet together or phase together around the corners of Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee. So the northern stream vorticity maximum is the main kicker here. So the Pacific and the Southern will phase first, and then we get an initial burst of some moderate snow. And then the kicker comes around, and by Sunday 4 p.m., that coastal low, which is situated right around this vorticity maximum, which is the blue area, will really start getting cranking. And then this coastal low rapidly intensifies. So basically, at this point, for all intents and purposes, besides not being a tropical storm, this would essentially be a category 2 precipitation and possibly barometric pressure equivalent snow hurricane, I guess would be the way to put it, because there's also hurricane force winds in the center. Essentially, a snow hurricane, possibly with an eye on satellite image, although it isn't actually a snow hurricane, will be parked off the coast and pushing up the east coast, and this low pressure will rapidly strengthen. So it will initially be kind of a weak low. The kicker comes through from Missouri and Tennessee, moves north, and the storm strengthens over the added moisture content of the Gulf Stream. It pushes north, unleashes really heavy snowfall, and then moves out of the DC area maybe Monday around 1 in the morning, and then intensifies to a category 2 equivalent low pressure around 976, and then further intensifies into a category 3 equivalent hurricane low pressure system as it hits the Boston area. And these bands right here, these may produce some thunder snow. This is very rare. This has not been seen since at least 2016. And for these areas, it might be the first time since around 2013 or 2015 where they get such a extreme snowfall. And these bands could be producing anywhere from 4 to 5 inches an hour at some point. So as we can see here, the American gives a DC area around 11 inches, and then further north and east up to 28, maybe even 30 inches, widespread amounts of 2 feet. And then moving on to the regional models, the North American model, which has performed the best, is also pretty similar to the American model. So I would be trusting the American model somewhat for this time, which is a rarity. But so we can see the low pressure again coming up the Gulf Stream, intensifying and basically throwing snow into the DC and Philadelphia areas. It's backing in cold air from the north, and this is heavy snow on the order of an inch to 2 inches an hour, possibly in the heavier bands closer to the coast. Storm rapidly deepens, precipitation shield also greatly expands, and the storm basically or essentially bombs out near the Jersey Shore, becomes a 970 ish millibar low, and stalls off the Jersey coast for almost a full day or around 18 hours before it finally moves out as a 965 MB low. That is extremely low pressure. That is very rare in the winter to see this low of a pressure, especially in the mid latitudes. And this would certainly qualify as a bomb cyclone, and the snow totals explode across the Jersey Shore. We see upwards of 3 feet on the Jersey Shore, and then about a foot or more near the DC, with Baltimore getting around 18. And then the more high precision North American model is basically showing the same thing, 13 inches near DC. This is a pretty big storm. Like the precipitation shield is stretching from Maine all the way down to DC and points south at one point, just due to the sheer power of the storm, the raw power of three pieces of energy coming together in the upper atmosphere will result in something like this. And this storm will probably be out of here. I see kind of maybe an inverted trough where the winds back in from the northeast behind the low and produce some snow showers. This could produce an isolated inch or two extra snow wherever this band sets up. The North American wants it near the DC, right over the district. I don't know if that's going to change. It probably will. It's impossible to predict exactly where the band will set up, so we're going to have to see that maybe Sunday night, Monday. But this model shows that the snow gets out of here Monday 6 p.m. If that were to verify, that is almost 48 hours of continuous snow in the DC area, and a widespread 24 to 36-hour snowfall. So this is a big event, big storm, powerful storm that will be impacting the East Coast. And also there's a sharp gradient due to the low pressure sitting right off the coast and the extremely dry and cold air wrapping in from the north that will help to fuel the intensification. However, there is considerable uncertainties, as we can see with the euro. The euro just doesn't want a big storm. I don't understand why it doesn't want a big storm. I guess it's just saying that the energy isn't phasing correctly. I don't believe it as well, because the short range reliable models aren't showing what or it is showing. So I'm just gonna say no, the European model is wrong. Hopefully it'll catch up later. If not, well, if it's right, the American model really needs to be gotten rid of, because it's just been horrendous this winter. But anyways, the precise band the Euro sets up, the inverted trough, is right over Loudoun, Fairfax County. That sets up around 7 inches, and other areas get 4 to 5. That's a decent snowfall for February. The Canadian is somewhat similar. I don't see why there's a snow hole south of DC for no apparent reason. But basically the same setup. Jersey Shore, Boston, you all are all going to get impacted. And then the UK model is not quite cold enough. I don't believe that as well, because a really heavy precipitation shield will almost certainly cool down the atmosphere enough to allow for snow. And then finally, we have the high resolution model, or the HRR. This is one of the most reliable short range models. It's also showing snow starting off as rain mixing over to snow by 9 a.m. and then the snow will continue heavy at times. Notice how this low is pulsing out the snow. That means it's rapidly intensifying, pressure is dropping hard. And we also see thunderstorms developing over the Gulf Stream. If we see thunderstorms developing over the Gulf Stream tomorrow, that means the low is basically intensifying, and we need to pay attention to that, which because we might be getting a boom amount of snow closer to 15 inches. And as we can see here, the low continues shifting north, but notice how the snow never ends. Even at Monday 7 a.m., it's still going on along the east coast. That's 24 hours, probably going to be even more once the precipitation shield leaves. And the total snowfalls near the DC area, 10, 11 inches, up to 3 feet along the Jersey Shore. I'm kind of concerned for the Jersey Shore. This is heavy, wet snow that is extremely heavy, and just heavy all around. It's going to be hard to move, hard to plow, hard to do everything about it, including melting it, because high water content and the high water content means that it's harder to unfreeze the snow, which requires more heat energy, and we might not be getting that much heat energy, at least for the next week. Temperatures are only going to make it into the 40s, which aren't going to help that much. So anyhow, we see the low continue to impact this area, and we will continue to monitor snow amounts and how the low interacts, especially tomorrow. It will be really interesting to see how the low interacts with the Gulf Stream and also the phasing, see if it bombs out further south and gives the DC area more snow, which is sort of what I want. And so finally, I'm currently seeing the DC area will get around 8 inches. Multiple models are showing around a foot. I don't buy into that because this rain mixing and the warmer ground due to the nice weather today will be melting some of the snow on contact initially before it becomes heavy enough to start freezing over. But anyhow, as the surface low gets cranking during the afternoon, we're gonna see snowfall rates over an inch an hour, and that should help the snow start really stacking up quickly. And further north you get, that's a widespread 1 to 2, maybe even 3 feet along the Jersey Shore, as I've said. Maybe near blizzard conditions, DC, Baltimore, and a full-on blizzard along the coast. So this is a really dangerous storm. Stay safe, and thank you for watching.